a healthy relationship looks like freedom.
Wow. Is it okay not to share your mobile phone password with your partner?
You're having sex, you're going on dates, you're, spending time with each other, but there's no commitment.
How to identify when a relationship has gone toxic? Financial infidelity, where a partner is hiding earnings. What do you do to de-stress?
No idea about this. Let's go.
Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Kamlesh, and today we have Harpreet Narula with us. Harpreet is a counseling psychologist, a life coach, and a relationship expert. Welcome to the podcast, Harpreet.
Thank you for having me.
Harpreet, what's been your journey like? What sparked the interest in psychology? Tell us something about that.
So, when I was in class 11th, I used to go to therapy, and I still go to therapy, not that much now, but I used to, continuously talk to my therapist about what to do in life and, which path to take. So the conversation sparked between me and her, and, thinking what is it going to be like if I am on the other side of the table, right? Helping people out.
Yeah.
So that sparked my interest in psychology. And then, I did my bachelor's, did my master's, and I did a lot of other specializations also in psychology, which led me to be a relationship and couples therapist. And I believe the quality of your relationships, they do define the quality of your life. And that's how I studied relationship and couples therapy and got into this.
Okay, wow, wonderful. So you are on the other side of the table, and then you decided to switch, and now you have both the perspectives.
Yeah.
What does a healthy relationship actually look like?
So I feel a healthy relationship looks like freedom.
Wow.
Yeah. Freedom to be who you are, evolve, obviously, pursue your own interests, right? Be in, have an individual sense of self in the relationship or outside, right? You're not tied to me because you're in a relationship with me.
That brings me to the topic of codependence in relationships. Tell us more about that.
So let's say I feel cold, right? And physically I'm feeling cold. My partner will not feel cold. I'm hungry. My partner will not feel hungry, right?
Yeah.
Maybe later, after a while, he will not immediately feel cold or he'll not immediately feel hungry, right? That's the physical aspect, right? But when we come to mental and emotional, we forget to separate the partners. We forget to separate me and you, right?
Yeah.
When we're cold, when we're hungry, then it's me and you because it's physically there.
Yeah.
But when I'm anxious and when I'm sad, you'll forget that it's me who's anxious. Yeah. You don't have to be anxious with me. You can hold space for me when I'm anxious. You can be with me when I'm anxious. You don't have to be anxious with me.
Quite insightful indeed. Now I want to change direction a little bit and try to address an elephant in the room. बहुत सारे लोग सोचते हैं कि साइकोलॉजी की जो किताबों में थ्योरीज लिखी होती हैं वो रियल लाइफ में एप्लीकेबल नहीं है. So is there a disparity between academic theory and what actually happens? What's been your experience?
Absolutely not. There's no disparity. It's just gap. We just need to cover the gap with trainings because absolutely whatever the researchers have said, it all comes into the picture when we're looking at a client. We know in our heads
Yeah.
what's
Right.
going on.
Right.
We'll obviously not state the theory during the session,
Yeah.
but we know where is this issue coming from. Where in your childhood you felt abandoned that is coming on to your relationship. Yeah.
And all that is backed by research, number of studies that have been conducted. Now a related question, बहुत सारी जो studies होती हैं psychology की वो वेस्ट में होती हैं या तो यूएस में या यूरोप में, तो वो सारी चीज़ें क्या इंडिया के लोगों के लिए applicable है?
Yeah. So humans everywhere are same, right? You're same as somebody in the West. We all have same feelings, same emotions, same basic needs, right? That we need to fulfill, right? Researchers in the West or in India, it does not matter because, of course, the therapy looks different. because of the cultural difference between how people are raised in the US or UK and how people are raised in India, right?
Yeah.
We're more connected to family, and there's a lot of, family involved in the therapy process as well. When, let's say we're dealing with children, there's, parents involved, and of course, there's a lot of family involved otherwise also, right? But in the US, it's mainly focused on individual therapy, right? So the how we are in therapy, that differs culturally, but researches here or there, it's the same because we're all humans. We
Yeah.
all have feelings, emotions. We work with the same idea of our primary needs and all of that. So
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. How to identify when a relationship has gone toxic? What are some early signs that one can try and pick?
So, the toxicity of the relationship and how to identify the red flags, as we say, is, when you stop feeling emotionally heard, when you're not able to connect with that person emotionally anymore and you feel unheard in that relationship, right? Of course, deal breakers and non-negotiables are different,
Yeah.
if they're broken, then of course. But the main thing in a relationship to look out for is how are you feeling emotionally in or after presence of that person,
Yeah.
right?
So,
That will tell you a lot.
do you come across cases where there is so-called digital infidelity, where somebody is in a relationship, committed, but then also has a digital relationship with someone else, and which is private and not disclosed to the partner? Do you see such cases, and what are your views? How to manage such situations?
See, infidelity is infidelity, be it digital, be it emotional, be it physical, right? That depends on, what are the rules that you have set for your own relationship.
Yeah.
So, but you said that the partner does not know.
Yeah.
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 So that's the area of concern in this case, right? And depends on what the partner is coming for, what issue the partner is coming for, right? If, let's say, if he or she, wants to disclose this to their partner, then that's the way to manage it is different, right? But you set your own rules for the relationship, right? If, let's say, me and my partner, we have different rules and the other person is going to have different rules for their own relationship, right? The idea of the relationship depends on those two people who are in it.
So each relationship is unique.
It looks
and-
different.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's important to communicate and set the rules right at the beginning
Yes.
and frequently, so that we know what to expect from the other person.
To set at the beginning also, and to keep regular check-ins
Yeah, yeah.
with your partner. If something's working for you, something's not working for you, and if you would like to explore something different for your relationship to maybe, get the spark back, or, different, you just need to have regular check-ins with your partner on what's working for the relationship and for you, what maybe you'd like to try, right? And what are their views and opinions on it, because we as humans, we keep reading, we keep consuming so much content, and we have so much access to information that we evolve,
Yeah, yeah.
and we need to have these conversations with our partners every now and then.
Yeah, and with the mobile phones in our hands, we have a window to a totally different world, possibly a secret world that nobody knows about. Is it okay not to share your mobile phone password with your partner?
If it's okay with your partner, then it's okay.
Okay. Otherwise, does it count as infidelity if I keep my phone always locked and I don't allow my partner to look inside my phone?
See, it depends on your partner if it's okay. If it depends on your relationship, if it's okay, right? If one person is willing to share their phone's password and the other is not, then that's a conversation to be had.
Yeah, yeah. Should work both
Are
ways.
okay, then it's fine, there's no problem.
Yeah.
Right? But if I don't want to show my phone because these are the boundaries that I have, right? But my partner, thinks that there's nothing to hide, and he'd want to share his phone's password and he has no problem with it, right? But he is not understanding my concept of boundaries and privacy, given that I am not in, any kind of I'm not breaking any kind of rule of the relationship, keeping that boundary intact in the relationship, that just, it's a personal thing, because your phone has your entire world in it.
Yes, and I may not be comfortable, although, I may be fully committed, but then the way I draw boundaries around my privacy may be different.
But
right?
I say, what's a relationship without vulnerability? Again, like, it's obviously very subjective to the relationship, right? But you need to have that level of trust with your partner where you also do not want to see their phone.
Exactly, yeah. If you if you
Because-
feel the strong need to always be checking your partner's phone, then that's another kind of red flag.
Yeah, I mean, you can say that it's a red flag, because then where's the trust in the relationship, right? If you feel constant need of, reaching out to your partner's phone, right? So there's this conversation that needs to be had, that, middle ground.
Yeah.
You reach a place and I'll also reach some place to meet you in the middle.
Yeah, and
Yeah?
and on every issue, it doesn't have to be the equal distance that we travel, right? On issue A, maybe
Yeah.
you travel more and come closer to me, but I don't have to make so much of a compromise. But then on something else, I can give a lot of ground to you, and so that's a matter of communication and taking one issue at a time and dealing with it.
Yeah, see, it's never 50-50, no?
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll be 70, he'll be 30, he'll be 50, I'll be 50, then he's going to be 90, sometimes I'm going to be 10.
Yeah.
So it depends on how you want to keep the relationship. The dynamics is never 50-50.
Yeah. Okay. Now there's another kind of infidelity, which is financial infidelity, where a partner is hiding earnings or expenditure from his or her partner. How important is it to consider that as a form of infidelity?
See, when you're in a relationship, you need to share all aspects of your life, right? With your partner, with that person that you're planning to share your life with, or you're already sharing your life with, right? So these are the conversations that you need to have before starting the relationship. How comfortable are you with sharing your finances with that person? How comfortable are you in sharing, what do you own, what's your salary, what are you going to provide for the family, is it going to be 50-50? And it's very important to have these conversations, and how the finances are going to look like. Maybe you want to have a joint account with your partner, maybe you want to have separate accounts. All of these conversations, if you have open communication and open conversations about finances in the relationship, then that relationship is not going to have such problems, right? When you start from the, hide from the start about your finances, about your work, about your investments, then of course it's going to lead to a problem, because your partner has no idea where you stand.
Yeah. And
It's a kind of betrayal to your partner, that her idea of reality was so different. Yeah, her or his.
Yeah,
Whoever is hiding,
Yeah.
their idea of reality was so different than what it actually is.
Yeah, and financial infidelity could be the starting of the end of a relationship in many cases.
Yeah, because it makes you question the entire relationship. Because it's a form of betrayal.
Yeah, it is.
It is a form of betrayal where your partner sense of reality has shattered, because they thought that you stand at some place, but you're at a different place, right?
Yeah.
And they view you, they trusted you.
Yeah.
but then that trust has shattered, and that, makes them question a lot of things about themselves also.
Yeah.
Right? Am I not good enough? Right? All of these questions arise then. Can he not trust me? Right? What have I done for him to hide these things from me? Right?
Yeah.
So it's not so much about, just hiding. There's so much behind it. And then, you need to ask these questions also, that, why did he do that?
Yeah. Okay, so now let's talk about a few terms that are very popular these days. What I'm going to request you to share is how often do you come across your clients using these terms, and more importantly, how to handle these situations. So the first one is situationship.
Okay, so situationships was something that I discovered through my Gen Z client. And yeah, we were having this conversation, and she told me that, I'm in a situationship. And then, of course, I was not aware with this term. And I asked her, like, what is it? So, these are the Gen Z terms that we have for different parts of relationships, and the whatever surrounding it is what I get to learn from my own clients, because I deal with a lot of Gen Z clients as well, from the age of 20 to 26, 27. So they are aware of all of these terms.
So as a psychologist, how would you define situationship?
So a situationship is that there is this idea of a relationship when you're acting like you're in one, but there's no commitment. Oftentimes, one person falls in love and the other is distant,
Yeah.
because there is no talk about relationship, but you're acting like you're in one. You're having sex, you're going on dates, you're spending time with each other, but there's no commitment.
Moving on to ghosting. Do you meet people who have gone totally depressed because a partner has totally ghosted them?
Not depressed, but yeah, I have seen cases where people are questioning their self-worths, obviously, but people are questioning, why has this person ghosted me? And then not so much for why, but also, again, am I not good enough? Do I not even deserve an answer, or
Yeah, yeah.
for that person to make it clear to me that that person does not want to speak to me.
Yeah, yeah.
Ghosting is so much to do with how you feel about yourself also, because you're not confident enough to confront the other person that you won't like to continue talking to them, right? And you just ghost.
Yeah.
You just disappear. It's not so much about the other person who has been ghosted. It's about how the person who has ghosted, what's their self-esteem and self-worth like, because they're not even able to have a conversation around, I don't want to continue this.
The next one on the list is gaslighting.
Gaslighting is usually something that, that changes your perspective of reality. Somebody makes you question your perspective of your own reality, denying what, you might have seen them do, or denying what they might have said to you. And it's a loop where they're making you question, right, how you're feeling also, and what's reality and what you feel is not.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So somebody gaslighting you might look like, I never said this, but in reality they did.
And then you are questioning
And then
yourself
you're
whether this person, whether there's something wrong with my memory or my the way I understand things. Am I in the wrong?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It makes you question yourself, right? Like, I never cheated on you, let's say. I never cheated on you. I cheated on you because you did this.
Yeah. So okay, and it becomes my fault
It
suddenly, and I
becomes-
start believing that maybe I did something wrong, and that's why my partner cheated on me.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's being constantly reinforced into my head, so that I'm being gaslighted. Online dating प्राइमरी मेथड है आजकल पार्टनर फाइंड करने का, और बहुत सारे लोग डिस्करेज हो जाते हैं. A lot of people are not comfortable with this online mode, and the nature of apps is such that you have a lot of rejection, although it's digital, but rejection does impact people. So बताइए अपने एक्सपीरियंस के हिसाब से, आपके पास जो क्लाइंट आते हैं, what kind of fears, anxieties do they face, and are these dating apps really changing the way human connection happens?
So it's very difficult to, settle when you have the idea of a perfect relationship in your head. Because of the pop culture online, because of the, online relationships, the content that we see on Instagram and YouTube and the reels, the 15-second reels that we see, our whole entire idea of a relationship has changed. We only see a 15-second highlight reel of somebody's relationship and we compare our entire messiness and the good parts and the bad parts of a relationship to their 15-second highlight reel. And it's become very difficult for us. All of us are striving for a perfect partner.
Yeah.
The idea of a perfect partner.
Yeah, exactly. Because we see the best slice out of 24 hours of so many different people that our expectations from our partner have skyrocketed. And it's very hard to find somebody who's that perfect in real life.
Yeah.
These days, a lot of people have started creating a checklist of what they want in an ideal partner, as if they are buying a product, right? When do you think is the best time, or is there a best time to really create such a checklist to find a partner?
Wow. Okay. So, see, the checklist that we have, it's such an awful experience to go on a date with a checklist. You're killing the whole, fun out of, going to a person, going to a restaurant, going to a bar, and having a conversation with that person, right? Because you have this mental checklist in your head, right? If they're going to check all the boxes or not,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's so awful to do that and to have that in your head. It's like you're going product shopping
Yeah.
for somebody who checks in all the boxes.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
what if there's no connection?
Yeah.
You don't feel it, right? But you look at your list and you say, yeah, this person meets all my expectations. But then nothing happens, no sparks flying. What do you do in such a case?
Yeah, see, because dating happens in a very secluded environment. We're just one-on-one with that person. I say, if you're dating somebody, you should include them in your life. With your friends, with an activity that you're doing, something that you want to go experience, right? Just include them in your life and see how it feels to have that person around with your family, with your friends. And that's how you can just, get to know how the person is also around your environment. And are you actually having fun with that person?
That could be a very good countermeasure to the anxiety that we feel today about social reactions, digital social reactions to how would people feel about my choice of a partner, right?
Yeah.
So there's this whole thing of soft launch, hard launch. So soft launch is something where you reveal that you're in a relationship by probably showing just the silhouette of a person, but
Just
not
the
revealing
arm.
just the arm or just the back, but not really revealing. And then you're waiting for people's comments and likes and reactions, and based on that, you decide whether to move further or not, directly or indirectly. You're doing that. And then hard launch also could be full of anxiety. How would people react?
Yeah.
Right. So how does that change the human connection? How does that change how we find love in today's world?
See, that's if we put everything online, which we do, of course, we seek validation from other people, right? What's like in comments, right? It's validation from other people.
Yeah.
And to base our entire relationship and how I feel about somebody that I'm with, how miserable is that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, instead of focusing on what other people are saying about my partner and my relationship, you need to ask yourself the questions like, the investigative questions. How am I feeling when I'm with that person? Does this person fulfill my emotional needs? And do we understand each other well? It has how your relationship has so less to do with what other people say about your partner.
Absolutely. Very well said. Now, do we expect too much from a partner these days? Do we expect our partner to be a friend and to also be a romantic partner and whatnot?
So, with, having said that, we are expecting perfection from our partners. We forget that we have other relationships as well that we can go to when we have something that we want to talk about, that you feel that, today I feel like I might meet my girlfriends today. I want to chill with my girls today,
Yeah.
because I have this issue in my head that maybe sitting with them, talking to them would solve.
Yeah.
Or if not, they will make me feel better
Yeah.
just by being with them. So it's so important to value other relationships. It's not fair to your partner to, burden them
Yeah.
with the expectations of all the relationships
Yeah.
that there are.
Yeah.
Your mother will give you a different empathy. You have different relationship with your father, and your friends are equally as important, right?
Yeah.
But after we get into a relationship, we expect our partner to be our mother, to be our father, to be a friend, a best friend, right? Hang with us every time, go with us everywhere every time. Let's say I enjoy going to concerts. Now my partner doesn't. I have friends for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's say I want to go to a salon, right? My partner has nothing to do with it, right?
Yeah.
I'll take my mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I enjoy good food and my partner does too. So we'll go together. Right? So there are different relationships that play different roles in your life.
So Harpreet, you meet clients, you sit through their stories, try to understand them and solve their problems. That means absorbing a lot of trauma on a daily basis, directly or indirectly. What do you do to de-stress, decompress, unwind at the end of the day?
So I don't solve their problems. I just help clients navigate their lives and their relationships better. I'm just a person who shows them a path, and it's for them to walk on it. I'm with them in their journey, their own journey, but there are no advices or solutions given in therapy. They give their own advices, they give their own solutions. The person exactly knows how to solve a problem.
Okay, you just help them see through the clutter that they have created for themselves.
Exactly. You pick out the pieces, you separate them, and you show that to them. And then it's for them
Yeah.
to decide what to do with those pieces. Yeah.
So that's a lot of mental work. How do you de-stress?
So over the years, I've picked out some tools that work for me. Like after a long day, I go to the gym, I work out. So that's one way of me just decompressing. And in the mornings, I try to meditate, sit through a meditation, even if it's just for like 5 minutes. At night, I try to, sometimes that I don't have the energy to go to the gym. I just, ground myself with walks, breath work, all of these things. Like, also meeting with friends, catching up with people, because the work is so secluded that, you're meeting one-on-one with clients and you're helping them solve their problems, that you need to get in touch with your own reality also.
Yeah.
And you don't have to let it get to you. Now, over the years with my practice, I've learned to, separate.
Okay.
That's a client issue. That's not mine. And that's not for me to take home. Yeah, so that's why also it's very important for therapists to have their own therapist.
Yeah.
It's very important for us to work with therapists that that we can identify our own issues and work through our own issues, so that we don't project anything that is coming from the clients, and we don't take on anything that's coming from the clients, and we don't project our life onto them. It's important to separate the two. So over the years, I've learned separating client's issue with my issue, and I just when the session is over, I know that it's their issue, it stays with them, I help them. That's what, so it becomes less tiring anyway.
Yeah. So like you said, it must help to come and work out at a great facility like Delta Gym. What's the connection between mental health and physical health, and what would you want to tell our audience about how to balance their life by working out, being physically fit, and drawing that connection to mental health?
See, movement has always been very important. And personally, for me, also, like, movement has been a part of my life since I think I don't even remember when I started. Like, I used to go to the gym with my grandfather. Physical movement with mental health, it's so related. Like, all the, when you move your body, your dopamine levels go up, your happy hormones, they release, right? So it helps with your overall mental health. The clients that come to me complaining about anxiety and mild depression and all of these things, the first thing I tell them to is to move. Maybe not go to the gym, just walk. Movement is that important. It gets the, blood flow going. It gets the whole, your system going.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's so important to include any kind of physical activity, be it yoga, be it strength training, be it Pilates, be it anything. Just move. The first thing that I tell them is to just move, go for walks, complete your 10,000 steps.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And it must have to do with the hundreds of thousands of years of human evolution where we, as hunters-gatherers, we always moved.
Yes,
It's
absolutely.
the first time in human history where physical movement is so restricted that unless you consciously decide to move, you might spend your whole day sitting in one room.
Yeah, in a desk, our jobs are so they require for us to sit for long hours, and then somebody is developing a back injury, somebody is developing a neck injury and shoulders and all of those things, right? All the pains and aches in the bodies because of not moving.
Yeah.
Your energy flow also in the body, energetically also, when you talk about movement, it's so related to mental health because movement gets you going.
Yeah.
Mentally also, like, if we go for a walk, if we just run, it helps us clear our head.
Yeah. Yeah.
It,
Works for
the,
me,
the
yeah.
brain, it helps with brain fog.
Yeah. Yeah.
So earlier, you're right, we used to go to hunt.
Yeah.
And we used to, and after that also, like, our mothers, our grandfathers, our grandmothers, they used
Until
to
very
farm.
recent history. Yes.
Yeah, they used to farm and they used to, use their hands and their legs and, pick up weights and all in those forms,
Yeah, yeah. We
when
don't
they were
use our
farming.
hands these days.
We don't. We just need to, like, use some fingers on a laptop.
Yeah,
That's
that's
it.
all,
That's
yeah.
all. That's all we do.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's why there's so much brain fog also. We're constantly doom scrolling on our social media, on our explore page, and God knows what kind of content. Everything is available.
Yeah,
right?
and
So
a lot of times you're dependent on the algorithms throwing random stuff at you, then you deciding what you actually want to consume.
Yeah.
Because you're not even controlling what you want to see, you're just scrolling.
yeah, so it's very important to get you going. Not only for depression or anxiety or any form of stress, it's just for your health in general, for your physical and mental health. They're both very interrelated.
Yeah, yeah. Great. On that note, on that connection between physical health and mental health, we close this chapter of this podcast. Thank you very much, Harpreet, for coming here. Looking forward to another episode with you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Friends, hope you liked the topics that we discussed today. Please do like, share, and subscribe if you like this podcast. Thank you.